So in this video lecture, we are going to discuss a very famous theorem, that is Coase theorem. This is a very famous theorem of environment economics as well as microeconomics. So when we talk of Coase theorem, it is talked with reference to externalities. Now, in this video lecture, we are not going to talk about externalities. We have discussed previously a lot about externalities. When there is a negative externality, for example, let's start this theorem with an example. Now, there is a factory that pollutes, right? And there is a nearby fishery, due to which the pollution goes to the fishery. And since there is pollution for the fishery, what happens? The fishes are affected negatively. So fishes die. So that means the factory's pollution is creating a negative externality for the fishery. Now, in this case, what we saw in usually what happens is due to the pollution, when fishery is being affected, optimum pollution is not produced. So, ideally, what should have happened is in an ideal scenario, this is the demand and this is the supply for the good produced by the factory. So, this is the price of the good that the factory receives. This is the quantity of the production done by the factory. Usually it produces on this point by market equilibrium. But if there is an externality, this is the supply curve, also the cost curve of the factory. Now, if it takes into account the cost to the firm, right? So if it also includes the cost to the fishery, the new cost or the social cost would be given by this. So this would be the social cost, right? Now, that means that would be the optimum amount that should be produced in an economy. But because of the externality, what is happening is we are not producing this. We should be producing this Q star. So we saw this in the last lecture. Now we are discussing the Coase theorem, that what happens, how do we deal with this problem of externality using a Coase theorem. So this was starting with this classic example. We are just starting with the Coase theorem. So in this case, we discussed of certain solutions of how Q star can be obtained, right? There are various solutions by which Q star can be obtained. Now, what Coase theorem says is, Coase theorem says, whenever there is an externality, right? Where would the free markets operate? Free markets would operate at here. They would not take into account the social cost. In this case, they say that in order to achieve Q star, what is Q star? This is socially optimum in case of an externalities. So now since the firms are producing QM and not Q star, how to achieve Q star? That is the main question. So there are a lot of things that can be done. But according to the Coase theorem, the solution suggested by Coase theorem is that assign rights. So in this case, when there is a fisherman and a fishery, how many agents are there? There is fisherman and there is polluter or the firm. Now, in this case, what will happen is, if there are two situations possible, one, polluter has the right to pollute. This is the first case that is possible. If polluter has the right to pollute, suppose by polluting it incurs a benefit of B. Now, this pollution causes a cost of C to the fishery. Now, fishery comes to the polluter and says that please do not pollute. Now, what they can do is they can enter into an argument where the fishery can pay something to the polluter not to pollute, right? Anything can happen. Now, there are two situations within this. if B is greater than C. So basically pollute करने की वजह से, due to pollution, the polluter is creating a benefit that is greater than the cost of the fishery, that is C, right? If such a situation happens, then what will happen is, no matter what, fishermen would not be able to convince the polluter not to pollute. In this case, pollution will happen. Now, the second case is when cost of pollution to the fisherman is greater than the benefit that the polluter occurs. In this case, what will happen is polluter will say that by polluting, you are having a benefit of B. So take any amount greater than B from me and less than C from me, and don't pollute. In this case, so what is happening? Fisherman will make a payment and no pollution occurs. So this is the first case when the right to pollution is with the polluter. So what we are doing in this case, when there are two parties assigned, we give the rights to one party. Now, in the second case, what we do is we assign the rights to the fisherman. What rights does the fisherman has? He has right to clean water. When the fisherman has these rights, again, there are two situations. One, B is greater than C. When the benefits that are happening to the polluter are greater than the cost, in this case, what will happen is polluter will go to the fisherman and say that pollution is causing you a cost of how much? C. And but pollution is causing me a benefit of B. Now B is greater than C. So for example, by polluting, I am getting $100 and you are getting a cost of $50 due to pollution. Now polluter says to the fisherman, take any amount greater than C from me, because that will cover the fisherman's cost, and any amount less than B. Because by polluting, how much benefit is he getting? He is getting a benefit of B. And let me pollute. Let whom pollute? The polluter. So in this case, pollution happens and polluter pays to the fisherman. In the exam, they can ask you how much payment would he pay. So in this case, he would be willing to pay anything that is greater than C and anything that is less than B. So if I am causing pollution, which is creating benefits for me, so obviously I will be willing to pay less than this. The second case is where B is less than C, right? In this case, what happens is, now who has the right? The fisherman has the right. Now, due to pollution, the fisherman is facing cost, and these costs are much greater than the benefits that the polluter is getting. So in this case, if the polluter comes to the fisherman and says, take a bribe from me and please let me pollute. He would never agree to this. So in this case, he would never agree to the pollution. So in this case, there is no pollution and no money is paid to the fisherman. Okay, let me give you a brief of what we have been discussing. So we have been discussing the Coase theorem. So in the previous class, what we discussed was that when there is an externality, right? When there is particularly a negative externality, if we allow the free markets to operate, so QM is produced. But this is not socially optimum. What should be ideally produced? Q star should be ideally produced, right? Now, but this doesn't happen. QM is produced in this case. Now, to verify this, right, to achieve this Q star, in the last class, we gave certain solutions. The solutions that we gave was government policies. What kind of government policies did we discuss? We discussed command and control. We discussed market-based policies in which there was tax and there was permits. So while we were discussing these solutions, government policies, then there were some private solutions that we discussed. What were the private solutions that we discussed? Charity. Then there was merit. Then there was one more private solution that we discussed, that was integrate the firm. Guys, please put yourself on mute. Okay, so these were the solutions that we discussed. With reference to these solution, what Coase theorem says? Coase theorem says that you do not need such fancy solutions. There is just one thing that you have to do that will guarantee the solution to externalities, that will automatically produce Q star, optimum output, and you don't have to have these so many solutions. For that, what does Coase suggest? That if there is a factory, if there is a fishery, both are two agents. So how many agents are there? Two agents are there in this case. What you do is you give the right to pollute either to factory, this is the case number one, or you give the right to the fishery to save air or save water. So these are the two possible options that you have according to Coase theorem. So what does Coase theorem says? That if these private players, they are given the right either to pollute or either to save air, if one of the right is given to them, then automatically Q star will be produced. Let's look into the official statement of Coase theorem. If private parties can bargain over the allocation of resources with no cost, then private market will solve the problem of externality and allocate resources efficiently. So let's go to the statement one by one. If private parties, who are the private parties? To firm and the fisherman can bargain over the allocation of resources. Bargain means, in this example, if you were there, so what they were bargaining, whether you should pollute, you should not pollute, whether I will pay you, whether you would pay me, and this bargaining was based on rights. So if private parties can bargain over the allocation of resources with no cost. So, for example, in this case, when they bargain, suppose some costs are involved, then this Coase theorem is not valid. So, there should be no cost of bargaining. Then private market. What is this private market? The market in which we are assigning rights either to the fisherman or either to the polluter will solve the problem of externality and allocate resources efficiently. Means problem of externality would no longer be there, and pollution, how much pollution would be there? The one which is optimum for the whole market. This is what the Coase theorem shares. Then we discuss the solution in detail. As a homework, I am giving you a question which can be asked in the exam. So there are two agents. Daniel, would you like to do this question now? And Jack. These are the two agents. Now Daniel has a dog and Jack is his neighbor. So naturally, when the dog barks, so it creates a negative externality for Jack, who's the neighbor. So, but because of the dog, Daniel, of course, he's keeping the dog, so he has certain benefit from the dog. But because of the dog, when he barks, it creates a negative externality for Jack. So it is a cost for Jack. Now, in this case, how Coase theorem can solve the problem of externality? What is the solution? For this, it depends who has the right. Whether Daniel has the right to keep the dog, or whether Jack has the right to no barking. So we will consider both the situations. First, suppose Daniel has the right to keep the dog. This is the situation. Now, what does Coase theorem say? That you have to give right to one person, either to party one or either to party number two. Now we are giving the right to party number one. Now, if he has the right to keep the dog, first situation, the benefit that he gets from the dog is greater than the cost that the neighbor incurs. In this case, obviously, if the neighbor says to Daniel, now what does the Coase theorem say? There is going to be bargaining, and there should be no cost of the bargaining. Now Jack comes to Daniel. He says that what does he say? He says that please keep, I am incurring some cost. Please stop the barking of your dog. So Daniel says, give me B amount of money, the benefit that I get from my dog, and I will sell the dog. I will not keep the dog. But Jack says that if I pay you B, it's better that I incur C. It's better that the dog keeps barking. In this situation, Jack pays nothing. Why? Because even if he wants, he cannot pay. C is his cost. And if he has to stop the barking, he will have to pay B. And barking continues. And see, it is socially optimum. Why? Because the benefit a person is deriving is greater than the cost of the other person. So the activity should prevail. Now, the second situation where benefit that Daniel gets is less than the cost that the Jack bears from the dog. In this case, Jack goes to Daniel. Why Daniel? Because Daniel has the right to keep the dog and says that I am incurring a cost. You are incurring a benefit. The benefit you get from the dog, take it from me. Take any amount greater than B from me and any amount less than C. Why less than C? because this is the cost, right? I am bearing because of the dog. And don't keep the dog. Payment is made and dog is not kept in this case. This is your case when Daniel has the right to keep the dog. Now, how will Coase theorem solve the problem when Jack has right to no barking? In this case, what will happen is that again two cases we will form. If B is greater than C, so that means now benefit that the dog keeper gets is far greater than this. So what will happen? The dog keeper, Daniel, will go to Jack and pay him any amount greater than C. So see, if he pays any amount greater than C, so his cost is covered. So now barking would not be a problem for him because he is getting the amount he gets from the cost greater than C and less than B. Why less than B? Because that is the benefits he get from the dog. If he has to pay something more than B, then it is better for him not to keep the dog. And less than B to Jack, and dog is kept. This is the, so what is the solution? Dog is kept. In the second case, when B is less than C, then what happens? Now, who has the right to no barking? Jack. And also he incurs a very large cost. So no amount of money can be paid to Jack. So in this case, no dog is kept. Now, I want to highlight some things in this solution. One, if there is a question, this is how you are going to answer. So what I want to highlight in this case is if B is greater than C, then no matter who has the right, barking continues, dog is kept. In the second case as well, when B is greater than C, dog is kept. So you see what we conclude from the analysis is that when B is greater than C, then dog is kept. No matter who has the rights. And in the second case, so that means solution is same. Solution is same means dog is kept or not kept. Now in the second case, when B is less than C, dog is not kept. So again, solution is same. So what we see in this case that no matter who has the rights, efficient solution is reached in case of externality once property rights are assigned. So this is actually your Coase theorem. It's a solution to externality. How do you rectify the externalities? You assign property rights and then automatically through bargaining between the parties, optimum solution, efficient solution is reached. Now, when I say efficient solution, what is the meaning of an efficient solution? See, naturally, if keeping a dog gives you more benefit than not the cost, then naturally from the society's point of view, you should keep a dog. If keeping a dog gives you less benefit than the cost, then naturally from the society's point of view you should not keep the dog, right? So in such a case, Coase theorem, the moment it assigns property rights, gives you efficient outcome no matter who has the property rights. But there are certain conditions to the Coase theorem. Two conditions. One, there are no transaction costs. What are these transaction costs? For example, Daniel and Jack, they sit over coffee, and while bargaining, they get aggressive. And now they both go to police. So now they both start arguing. These are the rules that are being established from an economic point of view. But human behavior is quite complex. When we sit to bargain, time is involved, money is involved, and when we are dealing with human behavior, a lot of things can go wrong. So when there are transaction costs, Coase theorem will fail to allocate resources. So one of the conditions should be that there is no transaction cost. The second thing that should happen for this is that number of parties should be small. So suppose now, instead of Jack and Daniel, there are 100 number of people in the society. It is very difficult for them to sit together and decide what to do, what not to do. So these are the two conditions that are important for Coase theorem to work. Now, I will give a question. It has been asked in the past years. So now suppose a factory pollutes and it creates a pollutes E star and it creates a benefit of $100 and it creates a damage to the nearby locality of what is the efficient outcome? How can Coase theorem be used? Okay, so can anyone answer what would be the efficient outcome? Will there be pollution or no pollution?
There will be pollution.
Yes, so that means polluter will be allowed to pollute. So now, doesn't it look bad to you that in an economy we are allowing the pollution? It looks bad. So that means Coase theorem is taking things into account from the economics point of view. It is ignoring the environment aspects of things, right? So then that is a trouble if we ignore the environment kind of things. So
Excuse me, ma'am. Ma'am, here the polluter will be allowed to pollute. This is because the benefit is greater than the cost, right?
exactly. So no matter whom the you assign the rights, he will be allowed to pollute in this case.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, so
So
guys,
ma'am, when we will be writing the solution, so we have to tell both the condition, मतलब दोनों को एक बार write देके then we have to show the whole process, right?
exactly, you should do that. And this is the point where students get confused. They think that how can pollution be socially efficient, right? So this is where students get confused. But in this case, there should be pollution. Why? Because because we have seen the reasons. So this is it. Any more doubts?
No,
Okay.
ma'am.
So this finishes your chapter of externality manq. I wanted to finish this. So this is done. The next chapter is public good. So whenever I do the recording, I'll send you a link. You can either join or I'll share the recording with you guys, and you can ask the doubts anytime from me. Okay? This way,
Ma'am, one thing
हाँ,
I want to ask, ma'am, all these notes that you are jotting
I will
down, if
share.
by chance you have the copy of all these notes.
I am
so that you
making copy.
can.
I am not copying for anyone, so I'll share them. Don't worry, I'll share.
Yeah, yeah, ma'am. Also, of the morning lecture that you took today, actually, I missed some of the points. So, if you can share the notes.
Yes, so I'm renaming it. It is your externality notes, and I have to share it with you.
Okay, thank you so much.